In today's video, I'll be showing you how you can create a manga character from scratch. So for this video, I'll be walking you through my process of how I create characters. Usually there are two steps to creating a manga character. The first part is the story behind the character, and the second part is the actual design of the character. So I named this character Sylvia, and I thought maybe there's characters in this world that actually, maybe there's only a limit to the amount of characters that have this specific power. So I called her Sylvia 08. I thought that would sound kind of sci-fi and interesting, but her nickname is Silver. And this is the part that doesn't usually get talked about when developing characters. Usually you don't know all the details at the beginning, and that's completely okay. Usually it's normal to sort of write your initial draft, design them, and then sort of go back once you know more information. And I did come up with an idea for this later on, but let's continue. So I thought of this character as being like a sort of gatherer or explorer. So in my opinion, I sort of imagined there to be different roles within the Ion characters, and these characters would some might be like fighters, some might be more healers. I could imagine that this character would be more of a gatherer, but unofficially more of an explorer. So while she is gathering different things, she may also use it as opportunities to explore. So as I was doing this, I sort of wrote the entire details for the character first, and then I actually drew the design at the end. So when I was working through these initial details, I didn't actually know everything at first. So I wanted to sort of get the ideas out of my mind first as I was building this character. So once you have the basic ideas of your character, let's move forward. Now, initially I thought that she might have I wanted to try and make her look unique and sci-fi. But the major qualities I ended up adding to the character design were the fact that her veins glow with the inner energy that all the ions have, making them visible through her skin. I thought that would be a really interesting character design quality. And her hair color is black with violet at the edges. I thought that would be also really interesting. Now for the eyes, I was really sort of inspired by Zaros from RuneScape in his design. He has, I believe, 8 eyes in the true form, and I thought that would be a really interesting design quality to add to this character. So I sort of gave her 2 normal eyes, but then 2 eyes underneath, and I thought that would also make her look different and more supernatural as an Ion type of character. And her eyes are like a pink color. In the initial example I wrote violet, but I ended up making them pink once I started designing the character more. Now I also wrote in special features that she wears a necklace indicating her status as a gatherer. I ended up not including this in the final design, but I ended up adding a little satchel instead. I thought that would make a lot more sense. But she has a collection of items she gathered while exploring various locations. So then we get to the part where we're really looking at the story role. And this is especially important when you're creating a character that is actually for a manga. So in the worksheet, we then go into more details about how to actually apply the character to the story you're telling. So initially when I was writing the character role or type, I initially wrote her as a deuteragonist character because I was imagining that she would be more of a fun or bubbly side character. But after developing her more, and giving her more ambitious goals, I realized that she actually has more protagonist material. She had really solid goals that would make her story really interesting. So I actually changed that later on. And then we're looking at the personal dream. So this is what the character's main dream is. It doesn't mean it's the story goal. It means what do they want internally. And so I could imagine that she would like to see the ocean or like a body of salt water, because during her exploration, maybe on her planet there's not really salt water available. And I can imagine she'd find the ocean to be something extremely interesting. And then we looked at the story goal. So this is the main goal that they have throughout the story. And for this one, I had a bit of a think about it for a while. And I sort of imagined that maybe she was... Because in a story, you need to have a sort of inciting conflict that occurs that pushes the character out of their comfort zone. So after thinking more about the character's journey and who they might be, I thought it might be really interesting if she is trying to escape from an arranged marriage of someone inside the Ion characters, and she wants to escape from that because she's an explorer. She wants the freedom to find new locations and to collect things and see different planets out there. And that kind of problem means that she would have to be confined to a single place. So that goal of finding freedom and going on an adventure would be very interesting for her to have. So think about what kind of situation they have might be the main problem in their story, and then what kind of goal they could have that forces them out of their comfort zone. And then the motivation behind the goal is that she wants the freedom to explore and become an adventurer, not be confined to her home planet. So then we're looking at character growth. So obviously characters grow and change with a story. Who they are at the beginning should be different than who they are by the end, and they should learn things as they experience the journey. So for this stage, you have to write 3 significant events within your character's journey. So the first main event I wrote, and this is where I was really starting to expand on these ideas because, like I said, I didn't actually know any of these details before I started. So I'm sort of learning more about this character as I develop them. So the first main event is that during the wedding ceremony, maybe she's on a spacecraft, the spacecraft is attacked by an enemy and Sylvia escapes, and she finds herself on a remote planet where her gathering skills give her the knowledge to survive. So she's using the skills that she already has and is using it to survive in a potentially hostile location. And event number 2, Sylvia meets someone trapped on this planet, but they can't see what they look like. So it's purposefully vague because at the point I was still developing these ideas. And I imagine that they could become friends, and she is determined to get both of them from safety. And I could imagine that maybe this person they meet, who they can't see, but they become friends with, this person could be some kind of natural enemy in form, but becomes their closest companion. Maybe seeing them, because I could imagine Sylvia as someone who doesn't judge a book by its cover. She's someone who is naturally accepting of other people. But maybe this other person, there's something about them that even makes them hostile or dangerous, or maybe they look scary. But Sylvia accepts them, not just because at the beginning, the other character thinks it's just because Sylvia can't see them. But then eventually later on, they realize that Sylvia can see them and still accepts them just as they are. And then event number 3, Sylvia explores a dangerous location, surviving on her own, and realizes that she can achieve everything she wants through her own strength. So see how through these events, with each single one, Sylvia is put into a potentially dangerous or difficult situation, but she learns something new along the way. And then we need to ask ourselves, how do these events ultimately change your character by the end? So this is where I really wanted to think about this character and think about what I really wanted to present in this character's story. So I was imagining that Sylvia was taught that her powers were valuable. And this is where the numbering system came into play. Because I imagine that maybe the numbers are based on the numbers of the characters in the Ion character type that have these powers, have the energy in their veins. So she was the 8th on her planet, born with that energy in her veins. And while the Ion of the past had it, the power was slowly dying out. And that's why she was in an arranged marriage. And that's why she was in an arranged marriage with O2, who also had the ability. And she dreamed of adventure, and while she did have the role of gatherer in her clan, she would also use this as an opportunity to explore. And during her unexpected adventure, she found something that would restore the energy to her people. So in the beginning, Sylvia was slightly naive and maybe a little bit reckless, but by the end she learned to trust herself and the powers hidden within her. So now let's take it a step further and actually develop the character's personality. So you can follow along with this and develop your character's personality as well. So we need to look at the positive traits and the negative traits. So for Sylvia, I ticked brave, determined, and independent, because those are qualities that I really think Sylvia would have. Some of the negative traits she might have might be that she's impulsive and a bit reckless. She likes music, adventure, nature, helping others as well. So if none of those apply, you can also tick other and write something that does apply specifically to your character. So then we have dislikes. I can imagine that she would really dislike being told what to do. Despite the fact that she does have the role of being a gatherer, I could still feel like if she wanted to explore something or look at something more closely and someone tried to tell her to stop, I could imagine that Sylvia would probably be a bit frustrated by that, because she wants to explore and she wants to discover new things. I could imagine that she would fear the dark, especially as a being that has light literally in her veins. Like, she would be generating light all the time. So if she was suddenly in a place of complete darkness and there was absolutely no light, I can imagine she would be scared of something like that. And her habits include talks to themselves and collects small items. So I could imagine that when Sylvia was going through some difficult moments, she would be talking herself through that situation. And of course, when she is exploring and finding new locations, I could imagine that she would collect little items that she would find along the way, sort of keeping them in her belt pouch or sort of keeping them in her room as sort of mementos of those adventures. So, what are your character's morals and beliefs? Sylvia believes that everyone deserves a second chance and never takes anything at face value, especially appearances. And this ties back into the character she unexpectedly meets during the adventure. She meets this character, and suddenly, when she first meets them and is unable to see them, she never judges them by their appearance, which may potentially be a bit scary, or they may be some kind of natural enemy of the Ion characters. So, what is your character's voice and speech style? So, take a moment to really consider how your character speaks. This is especially important when creating a manga or comic because you will be revealing their dialogue. So, I really tried to imagine and picture in my mind how Sylvia would speak. And like all Ion, Sylvia is prone to honesty, so I could imagine that all of these characters would be somewhat blunt and honest. Maybe they can't even lie. These types of characters feel there is no need to lie, and this means that she can be blunt towards others and will say things exactly as they are in a polite and overly friendly tone, even if it unexpectedly hurts the other person's feelings. So I feel like if she does meet the other character that I mentioned earlier, maybe this character would really care about her, and it makes sense that they would find a stronger friendship because when Sylvia meets them, maybe she would not be outwardly judgmental and she's not suppressing her words because she's trying to not hurt their feelings. It's more like she only says the things that she actually means. She is truthful and honest. And so for someone who maybe was told their whole life that they're scary, and then for Sylvia to say, well, I actually just like you the way you are, that type of honesty would probably be something that would be really special to that character. So now we want to look at the character's background and lifestyle. We want to really think about how does this character live their daily life. So I wrote for Sylvia, her job or occupation is a gatherer. So that's the actual official role, but unofficially she's more of an explorer. So her education and training includes basic healing, which all Ion, especially those with the energy in their veins, has the ability to do. And then she's got hobbies and interests, so she loves stepping away from the group and exploring. So she collects small items she finds to remind her of her past adventures. And religions and beliefs. So there isn't really a major religion for this character type, but all the Ion believe that energy is recycled. So the light in their veins once belonged to another, and when that Ion passes, they too will become the light in someone else. So that was the sort of energy system that I thought would be really interesting for these characters to have. So now we're up to relationships. You want to list the key people in your character's life and how these people influence your character in various ways. So I listed a couple of characters that are a part of Sylvia's life. First of all, I wrote Lillian, who is Sylvia's older sister and voice of reason. So she thinks Sylvia should stop being so reckless. And then Argeth02, this is the person that Sylvia was arranged to marry. They're not a bad person, but they have little interest in exploring and are only focused on saving their clan. And then I couldn't really think of a good name for this character. Obviously, this was all off the top of my head, so I was just sort of expanding on this as I was creating it. But I imagined that this was like a potential enemy this is the person that Sylvia meets but doesn't immediately see. So I named them Granite, and I wrote friend, ? This is the person Sylvia meets when trapped on another planet, and they can't see them, but they have a specific growl in their voice. So I can imagine that maybe Sylvia gave them this name. And we have Myla 40, and this is an elder, so she is an Ion with the energy in her veins, and she speaks cryptically, but also has a playful nature, and she doesn't look old, although she's over 1,000. So those are the main characters I wrote for the time being. I left the other places blank because this was just for an example, but of course, write as many characters as you need in your story. So ask yourself, once you have developed your characters, who does your character trust the most? And for Sylvia, that was Myla. When Sylvia was troubled as a young Ion, she would always go to Myla, and the elder Ion would always have something interesting to say or tell a joke that would make Sylvia laugh. Has any relationship changed over time? So when I was writing this, I could really imagine that Sylvia would probably develop a friendship with Argive, even though it didn't initially start like that, even though they were arranged to marry. I could imagine that there could be a potential friendship. I could imagine that they could be allies. So Sylvia didn't trust Argive at first, given their arranged marriage. Yet when the item she finds saves their clan and restores the energy, they find a reluctant friendship. Working together over time turn them into allies. So now we want to look at the powers and abilities. So if your character has unique powers and abilities, this is where you need to expand on those powers. So the name of the character's powers that they use, well, they're technically born with this, but I called it at this point energy veins. I don't know if that's the best term for it, but that's the term I went with at the moment. And it's sort of a physical ability because it's literally in their body. It's part of their system. So describe what your character can do. So many Ion are born with the energy in their veins, and they harness light and it flows through their blood, and the energy allows them to fly. And they can also transfer part of their energy to heal another, but this should be used sparingly as it drains them deeply and could result in death if they do not replenish the light. Now from here, once we've developed this character further, it's now time to figure out your character's history. So who was your character before these main points in the story? So first of all, let's describe the early experiences which shaped your character's personality and beliefs. So as the Ion, the ones that had the energy in their veins, as they were dying out, the elders became particularly protective, and Sylvia felt like she was constantly observed, which made exploring difficult, which would also explain why she really wanted to explore, because if she felt that she didn't have much freedom growing up, then she would likely be someone who would want to go on adventures. As she got older and took on a gatherer role, she used it as an excuse to wander further and further from the clan. So let's now look at some major life events that Sylvia has experienced. So the first main memory we're talking about is Sylvia found a unique item which no one could or wanted to explain. Sylvia took a potentially dangerous injured creature into her home as a pet. I could imagine she would do something like that. Heal a mysterious creature she finds on the outskirts of her planet and bring him home secretly to take care of this pet. I could imagine she would do that. Sylvia healed someone for the first time using her energy. Sylvia was stranded on an unknown planet and experienced true danger. Sylvia saved her people by restoring their energy and life force to them. So those were some ideas for some major life events that Sylvia might have experienced. So once you have a good amount of ideas for your character, you can also draw a simple timeline showing these events in chronological order. Since this character is just for example for this tutorial, I didn't do this, but when you're creating a character for a story, it can be really helpful to do that. So now that you've developed your character and you understand who they are, let's reflect on this character. What would your character change about their past if they could? So for Sylvia, she'd spend more time with the people she loves rather than recklessly searching for adventure. The peaceful moments are just as, if not more, important. Which past events still haunt them today? Since this isn't an actual story, I really tried to think of something that would be difficult that Sylvia would have experienced. And I could imagine that Sylvia found an item and she was able to save her people, but maybe she had to give up her powers in the process. And then after a bit more thought, since she has a healing ability in her veins, maybe when she finally returned to her planet, maybe something was happening to her old friend Mila, and Sylvia tried to use her own energy to heal her, but it was too late. So those sorts of events show who Sylvia is and show why those moments might still haunt this character today. So how does their history affect the way they see the world? So Sylvia always wanted to know what was beyond, yet the more time she spent away from the people she loves, the more she realized how much she missed them. Once she thought the people of her clan were trying to cage her, but eventually she learned of the dangers beyond. She learned that there needed to be a balance between adventure and the peace that comes with knowing you are safe. To finish up designing your character, draw a key moment from your character's past, whether it is a happy or a sad memory or a defining moment that influenced who they are now. So I wrote all of those details for the character type first before I ended up drawing the design, and you've been seeing the design along with the worksheet because I wanted to put it all together and really show you the process of creating this character. But once I had the ideas, I then started with my sketch and really started developing a character that I thought would cover and express those traits to the fullest. And some of the elements, like the eye color and other colors of the design, were things I changed along the way. But overall, I'm really happy with how the design turned out. I think she looks like a really interesting character. I really love how the hair turned out, especially. I think the eyes are really unique, but the main thing that I think is so cool is the energy veins. Like, I can just imagine that if she was flying and her veins were glowing, that would just be so cool. And can you imagine too, like when she's healing someone, her eyes would be glowing as well. I think that would just be so cool. But I was really trying to get across the fact that she's like a gatherer and explorer, but she's also someone who is in touch with nature. So I was sort of trying to add that sort of vines like around her top, but I also wanted it to be a little bit more futuristic, almost like cyberpunk. And so that was something I was really trying to get across in the design. Overall, that was the intentions I had behind the design. I think the color scheme is really cool. And notice how I also used color schemes that sort of are contrasting. So I used more of a violet at the top and then sort of turquoise for the rest of the design. I think it worked quite well to really express this character. So here is the finished design of Sylvia 08. I think she is just so cool. I absolutely loved designing her, and I think her design is so cool. It turned out way cooler than I actually imagined. I just love, oh my goodness, I just love the hair, I love the eyes, and I love the glowing energy veins. So can you just imagine how cool that would be, like when her eyes are glowing and the veins are glowing? It'd be so cool. So that is the final design, and I had so much fun designing a character from scratch with you, and I hope you enjoy creating your character along with this tutorial as well. If you want to work through my worksheet step by step, you can check it out in the pinned comment below. It will take you through the entire process that I use to develop this character. Tell me about your characters in the comment section down below, because I would love to hear your thoughts and more about your characters, and I'm sure others would love to hear more about your characters too. Visit my website minariscross.com for my full range of resources, templates and workbooks that can help you to level up your story. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!